In the beginning of the movie, we see monitor lizard wanders the main path while zoo workers gather excitedly in the animal clinic. Adult Pi narrates that he was born in this setting, with his father, the zoo owner, rushing to the clinic for the delivery. Pi Patel is cooking an Indian meal while the skeptical writer observes. Pi explains that he was named after a swimming pool, not after a mathematician. He recounts a family story about his honorary uncle, Mamaji, a swimming guru and close friend of his father, who was actually named Francis. Young Pi surfaces gasping for air as Mamaji, his swimming instructor, reaches down to help him. Mamaji advises Pi that panic, not water, is the real danger. He encourages Pi to keep breathing and not hold his breath, then tosses him back into the pool to continue his training. Adult Pi, preparing a vegetarian meal, explains to the writer how he got his name. He shares that his honorary uncle, Mamaji, collects swimming pools instead of souvenirs. Mamaji swims in every pool he encounters and once told Pi's father that the most beautiful pool was the Piscine Molitor in Paris. This story inspired Pi's unusual name. Mamaji stands in awe of the sparkling Piscine Molitor, admiring its beauty. He tells Pi's father that it is the most beautiful pool in the world, so clear you could make coffee with its water. Mamaji dives in, and we follow his graceful underwater journey. He had told Pi's father that taking his son to swim there would give him a clean soul. Pi reflects on why his father valued this so highly. Pi, reading a book, is mocked by a bully who makes fun of his name, turning it into a joke. Pi is humiliated as the other boys laugh. Pi is embarrassed as his science teacher accidentally makes a joke about his name. The class laughs, and Pi is left humiliated. Determined to fix this, Pi prepares for the next school year. Pi introduces himself to the class, explaining that pi is a mathematical term and its significance. Though the history teacher is impressed, a bully still calls him pissing and Pi braces for the rest of the school day, with French class coming up next. Pi impresses classmates by reciting the first 20 decimal places of pi and accurately writing the digits on a chalkboard, becoming a school legend by the end of the day. The writer mentions that Pi is a legend among sailors and inquires about Richard Parker, who was with Pi during his ordeal at sea. Pi clarifies that he doesn't know how to sail and that Richard Parker was a part of his story. The writer shares that he was in Pondicherry writing a novel but abandoned it, only to be advised by an old man, Mamaji, to meet Pi, who supposedly has a story that could make one believe in God. Pi laughs and says his story will speak for itself, and they prepare to begin. Pi's father, a savvy businessman, opened a zoo in Pondicherry's botanical gardens after France returned the city to India in 1954. Pi's parents, who met at the gardens, his mother being a botanist, had 2 children. Pi, now living in Montreal, discusses his upbringing and religious identity, revealing his Catholic Hindu background, which gives him a broad spiritual perspective. In Pondicherry, young Pi listens to his mother sing and recount stories of Krishna, including one where Krishna's mouth reveals the universe, captivating Pi's imagination. As a child, Pi views Hindu gods as superheroes, while his father dismisses religion as mere spectacle, having turned to Western medicine for his own ailments. Years later, while visiting relatives in Munnar, 12-year-old Pi is dared by his brother Ravi to drink holy water from a church. Inside, he encounters a priest who explains that God's sacrifice of his son was an act of love to make divine understanding accessible to humans. Pi struggles with this concept, finding it difficult to reconcile with his own beliefs about divine justice and sacrifice. Pi becomes captivated by the concept of Christ after a priest explains the sacrifice of Jesus as an act of divine love. Back in Pondicherry, Pi explores Islam, drawn to the practice and the call to prayer, and begins participating in Muslim rituals. At home, his family debates his eclectic religious practices. His father believes in reason and science over religion, while his mother supports Pi's exploration of faith. Despite the family's concerns, Pi decides to be baptized, embracing Christianity alongside his Hindu and Islamic beliefs. He later teaches Kabbalah, reflecting his view that faith is expansive and inclusive, with room for doubt and exploration. Pi and his brother Ravi sneak into the tiger feeding area at their zoo to meet Richard Parker, the Bengal tiger. Despite Ravi's concerns, Pi is excited to see the tiger up close and attempts to feed him. Their father, furious and alarmed by the danger, reprimands Pi and shows him the reality of handling wild animals by having a goat placed in the enclosure. The tiger swiftly kills the goat, underscoring the danger of treating wild animals as friends. The incident leaves Pi and Ravi deeply shaken. Pi, now a teenager, finds his world shifting as his family decides to sell the zoo and move to Canada due to financial pressures. He becomes infatuated with Ananda, a dancer, and learns about her art. As the family prepares to leave India, Pi spends a sentimental moment with Ananda, receiving a Rakhi, a traditional bracelet for protection. The scene transitions to the cargo ship bound for Canada, where Pi's mother tries to comfort him, urging him to look forward to his future. On board, the family faces the practicalities of their new life, including dealing with the unappealing food prepared by the French cook. Mother requests vegetarian food. The French cook responds irritably, saying the liver and sausages come from vegetarian animals. Father confronts the cook, leading to a heated argument. The cook insults them, and a scuffle ensues as sailors intervene. Pi and his family face a food dispute with the French cook in the mess hall. The Taiwanese sailor offers Pi rice with gravy, which is not meat. In the cargo hold, Pi eats near-tranquilized orangutans while his father administers tranquilizers, revealing his stress about leaving India. As a storm hits the Simsum, Pi initially enjoys the excitement but is soon overwhelmed as the ship floods. He searches desperately for his family, encountering a zebra swimming past. On deck, the ship lists, and the lifeboat is launched. Pi is pushed into the lifeboat, which drops into the sea. In the lifeboat, Pi is horrified to find Richard Parker, the tiger, approaching. He attempts to use an oar to fend off the tiger but ends up jumping overboard to escape. In the midst of a fierce storm, Pi dives into the ocean, avoiding a massive wave and encountering a surreal underwater scene illuminated by lightning. As the storm rages, he surfaces, grabs an oar, and struggles to get to the lifeboat. He manages to climb aboard, but the Simsum sinks, leaving Pi devastated and alone. At dawn, after the storm, Pi, shivering and exhausted, discovers that his lifeboat contains a zebra, a hyena, and an orangutan named Orange Juice OJ. He builds a makeshift raft to escape but witnesses a violent attack by the hyena on OJ. Richard Parker, a tiger, then kills the hyena, causing Pi to flee in terror. Pi finds supplies, including food and water, but faces constant danger and discomfort. He tries to escape on his raft but struggles to control it. In a moment of despair, he sends a distress message in a can, only to watch it drift away uselessly. As the days pass, Pi clings to hope, marking time on the boat and battling isolation and fear. Pi reads his survival manual and deploys a sea anchor to stabilize the raft as the waves increase. Following the manual's advice, he turns the lifeboat sideways, blows the whistle to upset Richard Parker, the tiger, and urinates on the boat to mark his territory, only to be sprayed back by the tiger. Later, Pi collects fresh water from the solar still and offers some to Richard Parker, while noting that the tiger will need food soon. He tries fishing with leather strips but fails until he catches a dorado, which he sadly kills and offers to Richard Parker. Pi inventories the supplies he has salvaged and continues experimenting with fishing. As the tiger gets hungrier and attempts to catch fish, Pi secures the raft and pushes off to safety, blowing the whistle to assert his authority. On a calm late afternoon, Pi, shielding himself from the sun, scratches another mark into the lifeboat hull, bringing the total to 38. He notices Richard Parker is missing and tries to retrieve the gaff, only to be hit by a flying fish. Richard Parker attempts to catch it but fails as a school of flying fish attacks the boat. In the chaos, Pi secures a stunned tuna and confronts Richard Parker with a boat hook, asserting dominance. Afterward, Pi eats the tuna, savoring it before devouring it out of hunger. Determined to coexist with Richard Parker, Pi fashions a training wand and successfully trains the tiger to follow commands. As he enjoys new comforts on the raft, Pi reflects on how these small treasures and his bond with Richard Parker give his life purpose. When he spots a freighter, Pi fires a flare, but it's unsuccessful. As night falls, he fires one last flare, holding on to hope. Months later, Pi, gaunt and exhausted, taps on the boat, reciting numbers. He and Richard Parker gaze into the depths, reflecting on their fragmented reality as Pi's pencil runs out and he broods over his fragmented existence. Pi, conflicted and exhausted, prepares for an approaching storm, securing his gear and losing his survival manual in the chaos. As the storm hits, he tries to share its beauty with a terrified Richard Parker, but the storm's fury forces him to endure waves and lose the raft. After the storm, Pi and Richard Parker, both weakened, find temporary relief in a rainbow. Pi, near collapse, reaches out to the dying tiger, expressing his regrets. On a vibrant island, Pi explores and finds a wealth of food while Richard Parker hunts meerkats. Pi sets up a hammock in a tree, only to be swarmed by meerkats. As he tries to sleep, he witnesses the bioluminescent island and dying fish, with Richard Parker watching from the lifeboat. Richard Parker gazes out at the night, the island appearing to breathe with the tides. Pi discovers fruit on a tree branch, revealing a human tooth inside, suggesting the island is carnivorous. He realizes it could be dangerous and decides to leave. Pi prepares the lifeboat with supplies and meerkats for Richard Parker, then blows his whistle to summon the tiger. As they leave, Pi reflects on the island's danger and the sign that guided him away from it. Arriving at the Mexican shore, Pi struggles to pull the lifeboat onto the beach, exhausted and near collapse. He collapses in the sand, and Richard Parker, who had been hiding, emerges and walks towards the jungle. Pi watches as the tiger disappears into the forest, feeling heartbroken over their abrupt separation. Eventually, locals find Pi and carry him to safety. Overcome with emotion, Pi sobs, mourning Richard Parker's departure and the end of their journey together. As the sun sets, casting a golden hue over Pi's dining room, he reflects on his journey. He acknowledges that Richard Parker never saw him as a friend, but he wishes he had been able to say goodbye properly. Pi laments the things he's left behind and the people he didn't get to thank, including his father. He regrets not being able to express his gratitude to Richard Parker, saying he wished he could have told the tiger, "Thank you for saving my life. I love you." The writer is stunned and unsure how to respond. Pi suggests that perhaps it doesn't need to mean anything, but acknowledges that it's hard to comprehend. He then reveals a tattered notebook containing a report from Japanese shipping investigators who interviewed him in Mexico after the shipwreck. The scene shifts to 1978 in Mexico, where the investigators question young Pi about the shipwreck and his story of a floating island with meerkats. They struggle to believe the fantastical elements and push for a simpler, more plausible explanation. Young Pi recounts a different story to the investigators, one involving 4 survivors: his mother, the cook, the sailor, and himself. He describes the brutal events on the lifeboat, where the cook's cruelty and eventual death led to Pi's own moral struggles and survival. He confesses to the harsh truths of what happened, revealing the cook as a monstrous figure who brought out a darker side in him. Back in Montreal, Pi concludes his story, noting that the investigators did not seem satisfied but accepted his alternative version. The writer realizes the parallels between the stories and concludes that the tiger represents Pi himself. When asked which story he prefers, the writer chooses the one with the tiger, finding it the better story. He invites the writer to stay for dinner with his family, hinting at a happy ending to his life. The writer, seeing Pi surrounded by his family, reads aloud a final line from the report that highlights the remarkable nature of Pi's survival and his companionship with the tiger.